I don't anticipate there's going to be anything said, but do I get a right of refusal? If something, if we get into something and it gets real murky, I'd like to be able to say no.
I don't know. I feel like you kind of waived your rights when you stepped in this room. Well, I guess you can't say we didn't warn him. Welcome back to Radio Juxtapoz. My name is Doug Gillen, and today you join me from the city of Ferizaj in Kosovo for the first in a two-part special in conjunction with the public art project Kosovo Mural Fest. Kicking things off today, I sit down with the Detroit-based artist Pat Perry in my hotel room towards the end of our trip. Pat was invited here as a participating artist for the Kosovo Mural Fest, which saw him transform the end of a 5-story residential building in the centre of the city. The mural itself was built around varying design elements, including a childlike fighter jet, a towering flower, and a beautifully reimagined photograph of 2 Kosovar children picking flowers in a field. Through his mural work, Pat has teamed up with social enterprises and outreach projects with the aim of developing youth culture in areas such as Mozambique, Libya, and Iraq. For his first visit to the Balkans, it was a pleasure to be able to sit down with Pat to discuss this latest piece and much, much more. I'd just like to say thanks to Labibe Topali and the whole team at the Kosovo Mural Fest, not only for their hospitality, but for their tireless efforts to promote new ideas and ways of thinking through art in the region. Enjoy the episode. We're sat just now in a hotel in Ferizaj, Kosovo. Today I am joined by the painter, muralist, photographer, filmmaker, illustrator. Have I covered enough ground in that one?
Yeah, sure.
Pat Perry. Pat, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to cover today, but let's start with the context, where we are, why you're here. How are you enjoying your time here in Ferizaj, Kosovo?
Yeah, great. Well, also, we're on this hotel floor by ourselves. There's nobody else around us, but we're here to do the Mural Fest with the Mural Fest Kosovo team and Labibe and all the folks that me and Axel are here painting. Let's see, just finished the painting, so we're on the home stretch of this trip and climbed some mountains, did some art.
First time in the Balkans?
Yeah, it is the first time.
A well-traveled fellow. What was your sort of image of what this place might be like, and how does that match up with the reality?
I think the weird thing about Kosovo so far, or what it feels like, is it really is in between the East and the West. It is this kind of gradation of as you're moving from the Middle East into Europe, and it feels like we're geographically synced up with the cultural gradient of that, it's a Muslim country, but it's not, it's more moderate. It's very European still, but also they're still figuring some stuff out here with infrastructure and everything else, but that's also because it's such a young country.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny because you look at it, it's visually, it's a very liberal place. But, I'm woken up at 5 a.m. with the call to prayer outside a mosque every single day. Yeah. And how's the experience been for you? Is you taking a lot away from it?
Yeah, sweet. I mean, it's been nice. All the people have been super hospitable, and honestly, though, I feel like most places, almost everywhere I've been so far, I can't think of a place where I would say otherwise, really, so I want to say that people here are extra hospitable, but also, we were in Libya a couple months ago and people on the ground there were also really nice. And
this is a little bit of a new direction for you, because I remember, I'm pretty familiar with your mural work particularly, and this feels like maybe a slightly different Pat Perry that we're experiencing.
Different. Yeah, or it feels different to me, but it always feels different. I think when you're the one painting things, even when you look back at the trajectory of what you're doing, it never seems to me, I can't see this coherent style, or it doesn't all look the same, but yeah, but that was one of the appeals of coming was they didn't give me any structure of what I needed to paint. Yeah, so it's different, but I don't know. It's still just, moving along with the other stuff.
Can you maybe just describe what it is? Because this is an audio podcast, so there's a chance people won't have actually seen it.
Let's see. A lot of it's just more simple drawings, almost like line drawings, framing in more painterly picture that's pretty loose and super colorful. I feel like the murals are getting more colorful for me, but let's see, there's a fighter jet in the top, and then there's this scene of these kids in these flowers, which is actually an old photo from Pristina, where these kids were picking flowers in front of the central bank, but I ended up taking out the central bank because I didn't want to really inject that kind of whole narrative. But it was going to be funny because the thing about the central bank being in the background originally with the painting was that it was going to be, I think, the significance to people in the West or in the US or maybe, in other places would be that, it's like this comment on economics and capitalism and what that means. But to people here, something like a central bank, we were talking about this the other day, is kind of this basic piece of infrastructure. And it's something we take for granted. And it's even hard for me to describe like exactly what a central bank does, but I think it's just one of those pillars that like helps each state have currency,
The society function.
Yeah, right. So that you can have money so that when you want to go buy a chicken, you don't have to trade a bag of bricks for it, like just these simple things. So I guess it means different things to different people. But anyways, that's not in it. It's more just simple now. And it's just like kind of a patchwork of pictures. But the thing is like there's a lot of things going on for all of us in our brains at once. And I don't want to pick just a single image to paint. Yeah.
Back in 2021, Pat was kind enough to write an essay titled 2 Guidebooks and a Painting for Juxtapoz. Through examples of American intervention in Afghanistan and Iraq, pivoted against his own admittedly faulted political stance, Pat's essay is an open call for us all to exercise humility in cases of political and social discourse, a trait that often falls to the wayside with the media obsessed over polarization. We're about to discuss some of the talking points of this essay. If you would like to read it for yourself, there will be a link in the show notes for this episode. It's funny sort of just being here in general, and I've just read, like literally 2 minutes ago, I read your 2001 essay, 2 guidebooks and a painting that you did for Juxtapoz.
Did you say 2001?
2001, 2021, holy shit, I just lost 30 years. I would have backpedal on that. So I've just read your 2021 essay, 2 guidebooks and a painting that you did for Juxtapoz. And in that essay, you're delving into US imperialism, the war in Afghanistan, among many other topics that you touch on. But what I find particularly interesting, what I really want to talk about just now is this, you've in previous years, in recent years, you've painted in Iraq, you've created, written this essay about the war in Afghanistan, and here we are in Kosovo. These are all kind of like pretty, common examples of where US intervention or imperialism or something to that effect may have had quite a big impact. How does being in places like here or Iraq affect your relationship with the US?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Also, I just want to say about that essay that I really was just trying to use those things that happened in U.S. interventions as an example of something. I'm just trying to talk about how we form ideas and opinions about things, because my opinions or ideas about those have changed a lot. Partly, yeah, because traveling and especially going to Iraq, but also they changed in a direction I didn't really expect. I figured out that geopolitics are a lot more complicated than we think they are. I think it used to be easier to just kind of like brush it all away or be like, of course, the U.S. has had these interventions that are bad and we can talk about how bad they were. But there's also, it's hard, like in Kosovo and in Iraq.
Almost like 2 opposite sides of where we would see the reception being for these.
Well, it's weird when you go to a place, and especially when I first went to Iraq, I was like, yeah, that war was pretty bad, right? To everybody in Iraq and to the we were also in Kurdistan, so it's a little different. It was with Kurdish people, but I was trying to make sure everyone knew right away that I was one of the good Americans that understood the complexities of it, and how all the missteps we took. But also people there were like, also Saddam was horrible, and I'm not going to sit here and justify anything that happened there, but just the fact that people surprise you in the way that they see it from different sides or see it multidimensionally at once,
Tell me about that experience a little bit then. Iraq's not a place that I think many listeners of this podcast will have had a chance or will ever get the chance to visit. So how did that project come into fruition, and, what was that experience like there?
This is actually a good thing to think about, I think, for younger artists too, how that project came about is funny. I just was basically searching on the internet if anyone was doing projects in conflict areas or like or working alongside like the bigger NGOs or the UN, and I was just searching around kind of looking, and then I found this group called Apt Arts, which is basically the brainchild of Samantha Robeson, my colleague on these projects, and Her and I have done that, gone to Iraq twice, went to Mozambique, just went to Libya. But yeah, I just found her and emailed her and was like, let's do a project together. And then she saw the paintings I'd been doing and we did a Skype call and then we became pretty close friends and have been working together on that. Yeah, so I think like just all that to say, like when you're interested in something, like I have a real interest in what's going on in the world and kind of understanding especially modern history. And I have I listen and read a lot about that, and so I just asked and reached out to her, and then we started working together.
Is this straightforward enough to go paint a mural in Iraq?
Straightforward. Well, the other, I mean, she
just in case anyone was like, hey, I think EasyJet are doing flights there.
She was like, I'm also helping work on the skate park in Iraq. In 2 months, we're going to build the first skate park there, and we should also do a mural project to go alongside that. And I said, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
So there was an infrastructure or the beginnings of a project already going.
Yeah, and she had worked there for a while. She had actually used to live in Sulaymaniyah, the town we were in, which is in northern Iraq.
Tell me about the experience then. What was there anything that took you by surprise, or was it as you would have expected in terms of an experience of being in and around there? I
mean, the first thing for me was that it was my first time in a Middle Eastern country. Being in a country that's pretty fundamentalist religiously is quite different. Just the lack of women out on the street was really hard to get used to. But also even there in the town we were in northern Iraq and Kurdistan, it was pretty duplicitous. So like, there was a lot of Muslims, but also people that weren't, and minority religions. So people were pretty accepting. It wasn't as strict as Libya. The noticeable thing, obviously, is the cultural difference with, being in a religious state like that.
And how was the response to the artwork itself?
Yeah, it was really good, actually. And that is another funny thing about it, is when you're in a place like that, there's not the same norms around what people expect you to put in the mural. Like, for example, they wanted to have something progressive or new kind of, which there means just painting. We painted a young teenage girl, which is, wow, it's edgy, with her hair and everything. And it was, we didn't want to paint her in the hijab. We wanted to paint this Kurdish girl, typing, like getting an education kind of, so we did that. But also flanking her is this traditional Kurdish guy, and he's in his traditional Kurdish garb. And some folks had also expressed it would be cool to paint something traditional in there. And then here I come as an American thinking, this is cultural appropriation. Like, here I am, some white dude. I'm about to paint this person in their traditional clothing, and I'm asking them about this. Hey, I want to be careful, and they're just not understanding what the deal is.
Nobody ready to write a think piece on why this like
it's just not a thing. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, we would be so honored to have this shown, and I'm not saying that it just depends the context, so to certain people there's just a different value system. Yeah.
You talk about this, or you seem to be drawn towards these areas of conflict. What role does art play for you in these conversations or in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be, and I don't want to be like a disaster tourist, but I do want to get outside
There's
of the
a fine
Western.
line, isn't
yeah,
there?
Oh, absolutely. But I do want to get outside of the Western world, and honestly, like, I mean, most of these things are cliches, but really the thing that it just drives home for me is I've definitely felt way luckier living in the US and just having the standard, what I see as standard comforts. Yeah. And even just things like safety and security and being able to go where you want, when you want, I can't help but like really the way it's shaped me the most, I think, is just when I'm back at home. Yeah. Feel really grateful.
What is the line then between someone that's doing genuine engagement and a disaster tourist?
Well, I think it's trying to contribute something while you're there, and also being real and being curious with the people, but also kind of like asking what they want and what the needs are and what you can do that's going to help. I think in these places also, another thing is painting murals. Not all murals are well received. Not all murals are great. It depends where it is. Some places also have a ton of murals already and people kind of roll their eyes at it. But in a place like this, there's not these large scale murals, and it opens up this idea for youngsters there, for young kids that want to paint, teenagers and people that can do that. Honestly, at the end of the day, you don't need that much stuff to make a mural. You need a lift and a lot of paint, and a skate park. I do have to say that. And one of the coolest things about the project and working alongside that in Iraq was I didn't know I was going to go back the next year. We finished the skate park. I helped on it a little bit. Mainly I was painting. But the skate park in Iraq, we had the opening day, there was a dozen kids that came out, are kind of pushing around on the boards. But then I go back a year later and we walk up the hill in this park where the skate park is, and it is packed. It is packed with kids. There's like 100 kids there. And this was just a random day. Tons of girls also, which is, it was just a lot. It's sweet.
I think that's where it starts to become a bigger picture. The murals are one thing, but the murals and the artwork needs to have more than just a painting on a wall. And that's where you start to build like this grassroots thing that kind of feels like a little bit more organic than just the painting on the walls. It's when you start to see things like the skate park, the illegal stuff coming up on the walls, where it starts to kind of like grow as an organism and into more than just painting. It becomes like a mentality that starts to shift for people.
Yeah. And also, the context of it is kind of how I'm trying to focus on where the meaning comes in of the paintings, less than me like being an opinion machine for putting ideas on a wall in the painting, or like making a billboard for what my ideas are, is where you're doing it and how you're doing it, Yeah, and exactly, like the context. And a lot of the meaning of those things in working in those countries especially is just that things that seem almost superficial but are not superficial, like just making contact with these other people and showing them that you care, that you weren't scared to go there, that you want to talk to them, or you're interested. In Kosovo here, and especially in Libya too, and Iraq, and lots of countries like this, I feel like people are grateful that you are interested, like you have interest in it, which sounds so obvious. Of course we're interested, but I just feel like people are so gracious and grateful about that.
The thing that will sit with me forever, I remember getting off the plane the first time I came to Kosovo, and the driver had said, where are you from? I was like, hey, I'm from Great Britain. He said, our angels are here. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, the Great British Angels, you saved it. And I was like, wow, man, my head is spinning just now. And it is. I think people do just have, there's a real graciousness here that I think you definitely don't get in Wynwood in Miami when you turn up.
Yeah. And I love how this helps inform my bigger analysis, or my political analysis, or how I interpret the events that have happened in the past 30 years and how our countries have been involved in them. But also, like, as well as I do, like we were just at this army base yesterday working with these Afghan refugees 15 miles from here. And in that moment when you're doing it, you're thinking about the broader context, and it is important to think about that. But life happens on an individual level with people. Yesterday we're just talking to people that are sitting there in front of us. And I just think that is the weird takeaway more than anything, is that you're just looking someone in the face and you're just trying to get through whatever you're doing with them right now and making that little connection. And I would rather have that stuff shape kind of my bigger picture and I do want to keep reading the books and reading the critiques and everything. But, this is what you're going to remember. And this is ultimately, we're all shaped by what happens right in front of us,
So this is, it was obviously, it's one of those experiences that will sit with you and sit with me for the rest of my life, kind of being in that place with those kids. And they were just so enthusiastic, and they were all really keen to get, there were some of them a little too enthusiastic, but they were also so keen to get painting. And it just turned into absolute chaos by the end of it. And this is maybe a very borderline unfair but quite blunt question. Do activities like this fulfill a greater role, or are they actually just a self-fulfilling performance?
I don't think they're a performance, but I think they are definitely self-serving in the way of I get to round myself out as a person, and I look forward to that, that experience is going to be something that helps me contextualize everything else I'm doing when I'm at home, most of the time doing boring stuff like installing a boiler in my basement. And I'm thinking back to these, or I was like looking at the HVAC or lack of it in this tent, just like these little things. So yeah, there's this part that definitely serves myself, but I think the performative, part of it is all about how you decide to show other people what you did, and it is a fine line, but also you have to know as an artist that you're doing things on a public stage, and either way, this isn't any different than anything else any of us have been doing that are painting and posting on Instagram and sharing what we did or what we ate, or, it all is a performance. I don't know.
Yeah. I was sitting with you last night. It was just like, I had that thing and I was like, I'm posting this thing and I was like, hang on, am I buying into the machine? Am I doing this? Is this self-fulfilling? And I was like, and it just started to, it spun me out a little bit. I was like, hang on, what role, what function is this doing anymore?
It is, and I feel like I've been real slow to kind of want to engage in that in the past. Or I've been careful. I don't want to post this. I don't want to tell people what I'm doing with my life. But the other thing is like, what's the alternative to that? That we just don't tell people that we did that yesterday, or we don't share that or something, you know? And to me, it's like, it's better to at least maybe go there. And I think it's just careful. You have to be careful about the way you do it, you know? We're not on there saying, and now these kids are saved by us. You know?
Yeah, we go in. I think that's it. It's when you've got the photos of you with all the children.
Right.
Saved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned billboards earlier. No, you mentioned billboards in this 2021 essay. Geez, I nearly did it again. 2021 essay. Use your voice. What are you about that?
Oh, jeez.
You wrote it.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I took a stab at Shepherd Ferry on that essay.
I'm gonna put in some big explosion sound effects in the back of voice.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just I'm just excited to see what the next phase of the culture is kind of after, and I hope that I've heard that Gen Z is kind of more into like losing the cynicism and the kind of like it's cool to be rebellious and like ride a motorcycle and like stick up your middle finger and stuff. Like it just seems corny to me to be like this whole thing of like rebel, use your voice, like all institutions are bad. And it's like, yeah, okay, but now what? Like I just feel like there's something underneath that or something like past that, or I just don't want to like this kind of cool guy thing of like, yeah, this like cool detachment, you know? It's just not that interesting to me. Like,
So you're gonna wear a T-shirt saying "Reform the establishment" or
just be graceful? I don't know. Sponsor complexity, yeah.
Sponsor complexity T-shirts coming winter 2022.
yeah. I know, but it's hard because these things are they're not as exciting. You know, they're not like attention grabby, but it's just like it's corny. Like credit card companies use the same language. You know, like I think it's time for artists to kind of I don't know. Do something different.
Do you think then that there is a potential much greater role that artists can fill within society that is beyond just here's some snappy logos, slogans, and some
for
cool
us
images?
To understand each other. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I think it's hard. But also, I think it's like I think of poetry a lot about this. You know, like poetry. Like everybody says they love poetry, and I'll say, oh yeah, I'm a fan of poetry. Like it's like, what poems do you like? Like they all suck, you know? Or like it's like saying it's a star that guides you, you know? Like yeah, you shoot for greater things with art, and it's not about necessarily that you did it and you made a transformative thing every time. You're not always going to do it, but it's what you're aiming for, you know? I think you can aim for better things.
What got you into art?
Oh man. I've been drawing since it's not like an exciting story, really. I've just been drawing since I was 4 years old, just like everybody does when they're a kid. And I just kept going and kept doing it. And all growing up, I was obsessed with drawing, you know? I spent a lot of time drawing and I just kept doing it. If you would have asked me when I was 6, I would have been like, I'm going to be an artist. Yeah. So
was that always like an actual option? Like, did you see in your head that you could actually have a job as an artist and that could be a thing?
Definitely not. No, because I went to a public school. There wasn't any special arts program. It was really thinned down, just like the basic arts classes.
Where was this, sorry?
In West Michigan. Yeah, like outside Grand Rapids in a small town called Comstock Park. No, I didn't see it as an option. And also, I had to pay for college myself. And when I was at that point, you know, I just figured I would go and I would have to be like a graphic designer or something. But I actually sucked at graphic design. And luckily, I was like, no, I could be an illustrator. And then I was starting to be an illustrator. And then I was like, no, I can be an artist. And I don't know. Yeah. Worked out.
That was it? You just became an artist?
I quit my job at 19. At 19, I quit my last job and I've been doing freelance and art stuff.
What was your first gig that supported you? And how did you make that transition, to go from being able to quit your job? Because this is like an important thing that I like to hear from people, you know?
It's a good question.
Like such a, hey, I'm an artist. I was going to be an artist and then I became an artist. So there's more to the story than that.
No, definitely. Yeah, I had... I had a paid internship at a graphic design company for like maybe 8 months. Before that, I was working at like a Mediterranean grill as a line cook. But then I had this little gig doing like this web design thing for like 10 months. And then I had saved up I think $1,400, and it felt like a lot of money. So I decided to quit my job, and I was like, this will give me like 3 or 4 months. So I got 3 or 4 months to figure it out. And I don't know, I just took off the life jacket and jumped in the water. But yeah, I think I had just gotten a job for, I did some skis for K2, and they paid me $700, I think. And I was like, man, I'm doing it. $700. That was a lot in that moment.
So did it start off mainly with commercial gigs then?
Yeah, definitely. And then I was just trying to wriggle my way out of that. I think a lot of people get stuck in that, also I don't have any shame, or like, I think it's fine to do that too.
I was going to say, do you think there's a stigma around, artists taking commercial gigs? Does that devalue them as creators, or you think that's...
I would have told you, I used to think it did, I think that a lot of creative energy gets sucked up into the advertising world, a lot of people that could be doing more profound things, but I also think that it's okay, that also there needs to be people making great commercial art, in the right context, yeah. I got a friend that's like, if you ask him what he does, he says, I'm a commercial artist. And I just think he's the coolest because he claims it, It's more just about just being honest about what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. And it's about kind of peeling back that stigma, because there is, there's fucking honor in that, there's a job in that, and you don't have to, you're not completely tied to the, desk life 9 to 5, and you're doing something that you actually like.
Yeah, if I was doing that all the time, commercial art, I would be sad. I wouldn't feel like I was doing what I wanted to be doing.
But there's stability. So if you're looking for stability, then maybe there's
and also I would never judge anyone for doing that. It's ridiculous.
Of course. What's your kind of connection with the street stuff? When did that start to come in? Was that always there?
No, I mean, I never was like a sweet graffiti person, but what I was doing was just doing like a lot of train monikers when I was riding trains. So I was just like doing like tons of thousands of little doodles on freight trains and going to the train yard, And then I started like, to do those, you use like Markol's like welding crayons, they're like oil-based welding crayons. So I was using those to do my little monikers. And then I started doing these big drawings on the trains with those. And then I started to see people doing the street art mural things, and I really wanted to try to do that. So I started painting some smaller paintings just on my own, and then, yeah.
I think this is the first time... we've had no shortage of artists that have been on this podcast that have come from graffiti and then moved into muralism, but I think this might be the first time that we've had someone come from the freight train scene.
Oh, man. Yeah, but that kept me humble also, because I feel like that scene is really tied to like the political punk scene, anarchy land kind of. It's a scene that actually people don't really care about. I don't want to say they don't. Or just the genre of art is different. A lot of people I feel like are more involved in music, about making little drawings for zines, things like this, but like you never would get a bunch of smoke your way for being a sweet artist. If anything, I was kind of embarrassed that like I had another like kind of gig going of like making my art career, so kept me humble.
Why do you think that is then? Not the humble part, the fact that it doesn't kind of maybe get the same respect or response than other forms of subculture?
I don't know. Just the politics, I guess, are different. Yeah, I don't want to speak for everybody.
Sure.
I think also, well, that's the other thing. I heard also, I think Jeff McFetridge said this. Did I pronounce his name right?
Yeah.
You know that guy?
Yeah, of course.
I heard him in an
former
interview.
guest on Radio Juxtapoz.
I heard him say this a long time ago. It might have been in Beautiful Losers or something, but he's like, I did this big gig. I did something for Pepsi, and I thought all my friends were going to be like, you're a sellout. I always felt that way, even just like doing big art show or like, or having a feature in Juxtapoz 9 years ago or something, And every time that happened, all of my most like rigid political punk friends were like, that's fucking awesome. Great job. They were so excited for me. So
it's nice it's like an acknowledgement of success, or it is. It's an acknowledgement of success. Even if you take a job for Pepsi, it's like, hey, Pepsi were interested enough in your work, your creative practice, to give you money to do what you're already doing. Like, that's a cool thing.
Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of balancing it out and not getting swept up in it, and not just, I think it is easy to chase the money or to just, if you're getting emails all the time, we're going to pay you 10 grand to do this, we're going to pay you 15 grand to do that, and it's just building with the commercial art thing. People just do what they're incentivized to do. It's not anyone's fault really, but I think it's good to just try to like also remember what you actually want to do when you look back 20 years from now and what your art was, you know.
It's funny you say that, because I've seen in the London scene particularly, I've seen what the hand painted mural adverts, what that's done to creativity for artists in the city, and it's completely sucked it out, and it's this false sort of straw man, almost as if it's like saying, hey, look, we've got artists doing creative things and we're paying them and they're all getting work. Yeah, but none of them are making their own art anymore.
Yeah, right.
None of them are doing shows anymore, and they're all doing these, you know, big adverts for your companies.
Well, and the best way I've found to balance that out in the past several years is I found a way to start kind of making bigger commissions, doing some murals usually in the States. So I'll do 1 or 2 big mural commissions a year and kind of cover a lot of my finances with those, and then I can do stuff like this. You know, I can go to Kosovo or Libya or these countries where we're obviously not getting paid, and it's tiring and it's a lot of work and it's a big time suck, but those other jobs allow you to do that. So I think it's just a springboard for stuff, you know.
For you, this has a more rewarding balance.
Yeah, totally. I mean, every painting though, I mean, I feel really good about, but yeah.
But you're still an exhibiting artist.
Yeah, definitely. And
so how does your studio practice fit into all this then, into the grand scheme of things?
There's a different sort of freedom with studio paintings and a whole different list of considerations, you know? Yeah, but I'm trying to bring those two closer together, what's in the murals and what's in the studio paintings. But
because for a while, they almost were two separate artists.
Yeah. And they're still different, you know, but also there's a whole bunch of different stuff to consider when you're going to do something that people are going to see every day, maybe from their like bedroom window, you know, and they're going to walk by every day, and you have a big responsibility that way. You know, if someone doesn't want to look at your studio painting, they really don't have to.
They don't have to put their hand in their pocket and buy it. They don't have to come to the show. There's no opt out with a mural. What inspires you? How do you approach like a body of work in the studio? Is it coming from an idea as a collection, or are you just looking for individual bits of inspiration?
The last one, the sense making show at Hashimoto that was last fall, that was definitely like more of a concept album, I guess. Like I had this big idea about what was behind it and kind of this whole world. It was like a lot of, I would guess I'd call it world building, you know, or that's how people would describe that. But now I'm trying for the next show to be a little more intuitive about it. Or I feel like I have this visual language that I've been building, and I have these lists in my sketchbook of, it's like a vocabulary kind of like these different motifs that are coming up. You know, I've been like using a lot of Craigslist things over and over.
Just for the listener then, could you maybe describe what this visual language, some signifiers, some of these motifs might be? So if I could see it, I could go, oh, okay, I get that now. Yeah,
so there's like this group of performers that are in a lot of these paintings, and then there's also like there are almost always landscapes. There's like that part of it, and then there's also swimming pools, Craigslist ads, things taken from Craigslist ads, Wi-Fi, like internet language, sort of just like a myriad of these things that from the last show that I think I'm still like using and are transforming into other things. But
so it's
hard to describe your art in words.
Apparently. Sorry, that was such an unnecessary take. Sorry. What? And
it's 7:30. Is it 7:30 a.m.?
We're at 8 now.
Okay. No excuse.
I got room for you.
You're listening to Pat Perry live in conversation with me, Doug Gillen, from Ferizaj, Kosovo, for this year's edition of the Kosovo Mural Fest. Stay with us now as we journey further into Pat's past with his obsession of freight trains, activism, and a lot more. I want to jump back actually, because we kind of touched about freight train culture there, and there was a bunch of questions that I actually did want to ask, because it's something that you've talked about really fondly. What is it that interested you about, you know, riding freight trains, and you know, what do you get from that, and is it still something you're actively participating in?
Well, I do want to say that, because I mean, for anybody else riding trains out there, I definitely am barely. I mean, I ride a train maybe 1 to 2 times a year. Mainly, I have like a Costco card now and stuff, and homeowners insurance. So, and
a boiler that you're fixing up.
Yeah, but I used to ride a lot of trains, and yeah, I mean, I don't know what
was the appeal.
Yeah, I had no money and I wanted to travel, and it's so beautiful. It's like endlessly scrolling scenery for days, and it's this cat and mouse game. It's fun, you have to hide from the cops or the rail police, and there's a huge reward of this scenery. You get to see, it's like you get to see America from backstage. I know that's corny, but it really is. I love that. But normally, if you take a road trip, you're driving down a highway, all the billboards are facing you. Everything is facing you, ready for you to drive that direction. And this, there's some Amtrak that goes on it, but mainly you're just going through people's backyards, through the backs of towns. It's like a secret window into things. It's so sweet. Yeah, it's great. But it's weird that I still feel like that's part of my personality or something with art. But I mean, I don't even want to claim that. I'm just trying to pay attention to real life, everyday things now, and just trying to kind of enliven them through painting.
Any of your work is still on the trains?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, people send me photos sometimes, like friends, and I see friends stuff. Yeah, it lasts a while.
Is there a particular memorable route that stood out for you, and why? Like a particular part of the country that just kind of caught your heart?
I mean, out west is the spot to ride trains. It's sweet because also if you get one, you can ride for 2 days and not have to switch trains. The East Coast is like this crazy intricate web, but definitely also Canada, like the Canadian High Line was awesome. But Glacier National Park, Montana, Wyoming, big states, and wow, yeah.
You can probably hear it in his voice. He's got a big grin on his face as he's talking about this. Like definitely the most animated I've seen him.
Well, it's so romantic too, and we were just talking earlier yesterday, I know, about trying to be less romantic in a way about what you expect out of life, but it is one thing that just checks the boxes, all the romantic boxes.
Is it still a thing? And I always try to picture myself as someone that's just listened to you talk about this. Like what's the best piece of advice if I think, hey, I'm broke and I want to see the country, how do I do it?
I'm just going to put a disclaimer that there's not a huge train riding community really, and folks really don't love the YouTube GoPro videos, that kind of thing. It is true that it kind of puts it at risk. Well, it just puts it at risk. Like if the train companies kind of get wind that this is a problem or there's enough people doing it, so I would say, I don't know, try to keep it low profile if you're going to do it. But be safe. It is dangerous. You got to be careful doing stuff like that. And there's friends and people we know that have gotten killed. And so I don't want to necessarily be encouraging people to do that, but if you're going to do it, talk to someone that's done it and get some advice and think about it. And also, here's something to deter you. The rule of thumb is that it's 3 parts. It's 1/3 walking, 1/3 waiting, 1/3 riding. So it's a lot of boring sitting around behind a gas station or in a bush, just being so bored. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That was sober advice there. I like that. You talked about the kind of connection that the freight trains had with sort of anarchist and punk politics. You've got a little bit of a history in some of that yourself. Have you ever been arrested?
Oh, funny you ask. Yeah, now we're going into territory. This is all almost 10 years, but I did a direct action with Earth First, which is an environmental group that does a nonviolent direct action. And also I do have to say that there's a long history of this. I wasn't as involved and integral to that as a lot of people I know were. Even the difference in viewing the climate movement in 2011, it felt like you were just yelling into the void and nobody was paying attention. It really did feel like that to me. And at the time we were like, we got to do something. And also I was in my early 20s. So we were getting pretty extreme out there. And we were in Southern Ohio, like 80 of us all had this 3-day meetup in the middle of the winter up on this farm. And it's just we were outside almost the whole time, just bundled up, planning this thing. And we all, the day of the action, we all woke up at sunrise, put on these white hazmat suits. So it was hard to tell who was who. And we all looked the same. And then we just rushed this frack waste facility and chained ourselves to all the equipment in the trucks, and then we built this huge monopod pole sticking up, and then it was held up and someone climbed 30 feet to the top of it. This guy Nate, he was being held up by these chains coming down on all sides, or 3 sides of it, and they were tied to trucks. So if they moved the trucks and they were using that infrastructure, he would fall down and die. So they couldn't move it. So we were holding it hostage basically. And it was a frack waste facility. So they're shipping frack waste down the Ohio River by barge, which was dangerous to the environment we were as we thought. And so we stopped work for about, I don't know, 7 hours while they dealt with us, and then I got arrested and I went to jail for 2 days.
Beautiful. I'm glad I asked you that. There was definitely a more elegant, graceful way of segueing, wrenching that story into the conversation. But we were sat yesterday in the US Army base, and it was one of the things that we ended up talking about. I thought that was a really insightful little snapshot into maybe a past Pat.
Yeah.
But are you still as sort of proactive with your politics and things like that as maybe a young 20-year-old buck might have been?
I don't think I'm as self-righteous about my politics. I think that I'm more curious. I want to talk to different types of people. I feel like more pragmatic about things, hopefully. I know that it's not cool, really, exactly, to be... I know it comes across... It reads better to be strong and emphatic about what you believe, but I guess...
I am right. You are wrong. This is why I am right.
Yeah, I mean, in a way. But I feel like my ethics and my political journey now is a lot... I feel more proud of who I am now than I was, yeah.
Was there a gradual transition between young hazmat, dangling from the rafters?
Well, I think it's seeing your size in the world. Like, I think it's about thinking about what you actually want to do or what you want to sound like and come off as, like these big picture items and these culture war issues and different things that these dilemmas of our times, they're important, and it's important to have some analysis on them. But also what really matters is what you're doing. That's, what's right in front of you and what you're doing. And like, for example, like, living in my house in Detroit, in the neighborhood that I live in, it's all black neighborhood. It's like somewhere that I've planted roots. I've lived in that house now for 7 years, and just like focusing on the local politics of my neighborhood, trying to like keep things on an even keel there, and help and contribute and grow that community is something I'm much more proud of than me making an Instagram story in the pastel colors with whatever meme. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. So I think about what my impact can actually be. And obviously it's both, but doing things in Kosovo or something like this scratches one itch of trying to be in contact with the larger picture of what's going on. But also, if you're political, you should be doing something where you are that's local too. Otherwise, what are you doing? Yeah. You're just talking. Or cool, you have you think this is bad? Wow, sweet.
As an artist that is, always... Actually, I don't know. How much of your year, is traveling and how much is sort of based at home?
Since COVID, the past few years has been a lot more at home.
And how do you feel about that sort of, nesting and that base and setting up some, like you say, some roots? It can be quite a hard thing to do, when this lifestyle, this kind of hotel, moving. It can be draining, but it's...
Well, I traveled for years also. That was one of the reasons I bought the house in Detroit and fixed it up, this abandoned house, is that I was just like, it's actually really limiting and constricting when you're living out of a bag. You have a limited set of options. Oh, cool, I can go to this coffee shop and hang out for a while, or I can like sit around with my friends or whatever. But I feel more freedom from having somewhere to base things and to build things, make things, think about things, make food,
When or what was the last thing you changed your mind about?
Oh man, I never got to that question. You gotta structure it a different way. I don't have one off the top of my head. Yeah, I love that question, but yeah, it's a tough one. But I would say in that essay though, and that was a lot of what I was trying to write about, was changing my mind. I guess like the greater thing, I can't say one, but over the past several years, I just feel like changing my mind about how, okay, here's a big one. I'm not great at summarizing this, but like, I think when I look at most people, I think like 90% of people in the world are trying to do the right thing and be pretty good people. And there are like evil people out there and the powers that be and, a cabal of some corporate this and that. But I'd say like most people I meet, I think it's like beyond good and evil, I guess is what I'm saying. Like human beings do make horrible mistakes when they're trying to do the right thing, and that's kind of like the context I see the world. That's changed a lot in the past few years. Like I don't see like good and bad in the same way. I guess.
Maybe then a better way of phrasing it for this one would be, why should we change our mind?
Because you have huge blind spots, because moral humility, epistemic humility, especially now with the digital age, like look how much trouble during COVID everyone had with finding the right information about the vaccines and about anything else. I still don't know if I made all the right choices, but I did my best. But it was incredibly hard to find what was true and what was real. And not to get into a whole side thing on that, but just that it's incredibly tough right now in this information ecosystem to figure out what's real, you know. And also the less you just have so much to kind of process. It's like this huge drain on trying to figure that out. So yeah, just be conscious of that, you know, like we're all wrong about so many things, you know, like of course.
Daily.
Yeah. I don't know.
One of the other things you talked about in the essay was this sense of tribes and tribalism. And you went to a Catholic school. You were a member of anarchist groups or climate groups. Do you think tribes are something that we as humans actively seek, or is it that they fulfill a particular role for you?
Oh, I mean, it's like the most natural, as far as I understand with history, it's the most natural thing ever. You know, of course, that's how humans have lived for time immemorial, you know?
So where are you then in this current spectrum of tribes?
I mean, I'm sure I'm part of some tribe. I definitely feel like I'm in an echo chamber with the kind of artists and other people I hang out with, but also that's why I feel like I want to be vulnerable. And that's part of what that essay was saying or what I was trying to say is that I think it's good to talk to all kinds of people. And this guy, Ron Scott in Detroit, he's like a former Black Panther. He founded the Coalition of Police Against Police Brutality in Detroit. You know, he's a lefty guy, but he was like, I think it was him that told me, he died a few years ago, but he said like artists are supposed to talk to everybody. It's simple, but like think about that. Like even the people you think are like you're totally against almost, you know, like, and I really want to try to be almost militant. Maybe there's one thing I feel strongly about is really challenge myself to do that. I want to talk to everybody. We're hanging out yesterday at this base with these US soldiers. Like, just because I want to talk to these people, and look how different they all were from each other. It wasn't like it was all these like big burly bro white dudes. It wasn't that at all. Like, you're just talking to these people and I'm happy to talk to them. It doesn't mean that I'm endorsing US imperialism because I want to hear what's going on here. I just want to talk to this person, you know, like, does that make sense?
I'd like to thank the US Embassy for funding this trip.
Yeah.
No, but of course it makes sense. And I think this is what, you know, when you look at, and I think I've mentioned his name the other day and I don't know if it connected, but Louis Theroux, the journalist, I'm sure plenty of listeners will be familiar, UK journalist, and he will go out and he'll sit there and do these really kind of candid, calm interviews with white supremacists. And he'll be, you know, or with the Westboro Church, Baptist Church, you know, he'll sit there and live with them for like 2 weeks at a time and just completely opposing views and opinions, but will immerse themselves in their world and just allow them the space to kind of to be comfortable and to tell their story, and it's maybe not the job of an artist in this respect, the same as a journalist. It's not to judge, it's just to open up this space for that kind
there's
of
like
opinion.
a quote about that too. Art is supposed to, it seeks to understand, not to judge, you know, but like also, of course, like, it, you know, it doesn't mean that, I don't know, like it reminds me too of that lady that, I think she had like a Netflix show, and also I heard her on an interview on a different podcast, but she also, like, I think she's Muslim. She went and hung out with white supremacists, talked to them, hung out with them for maybe a month, and almost all of them backed down on it, because as soon as you know someone and you look someone in the face that's different than you, or that is from supposedly a different world or ideology, you cannot help but soften them and not stereotype them, you know? And that's what so many of these projects have been about. And I know it sounds simple or like almost like obvious. It's like a lesson you teach to kindergartners, but it's also why I think like the gay rights movement has had so much play. As soon as you know someone that's of a different group that you were othering or stereotyping, you just can't do it as easily, you know? And it's humanizing, you know? Yeah.
I love that.
It sounds so cheesy, but
the exact same thing is this, you know, idea of just fucking speaking to someone, you know, it's this going to the camp yesterday and looking into the eyes and just having that, forgetting about everything else and just doing hand painting with kids. It's like all the other stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, and you know how small of a fraction we're in of people that have gotten to do that much of that, or this much, or in that many different places, you know? It's amazing. It's amazing.
How do you feel? I always see you as kind of like, and you touched on the kind of the culture of muralism and things like that a little bit earlier. Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself in this collective of muralists? And this kind of goes back to the tribal thing, I guess, a little bit, because I always see you as maybe a little on the sort of the outer circle of this, even though you're still doing international projects and have a, you know, pretty substantial Instagram following and all this stuff, but you're still sort of maybe on the fringes. Is that an accurate thing to say, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think that, are the other artists all like, did they have a party that I didn't get invited to?
It's called Winwood.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but I'm not super interested. I don't know. Yeah, maybe, but I think it's also because how I structure my personal life. Like, I'm private about other parts of my life, and I feel like most of my friends don't do the same type of art, or at least not in the same way. And a lot of them have normal jobs too, and also we don't talk about my art that much. We do a little bit, but like, yes, but I like that. I don't know. I don't want, what, you want to hang out with all other artists all the time? But then again, when I come on trips like this, or like hanging out with Alex, you know, and everything else, it's great. But at home, I don't know. I just fall into hanging out with who's around, you know? Yeah, so maybe it's just being in Detroit.
Maybe that plays a part in the fact that maybe this is just a job.
Yeah. I don't know.
So what's coming up for you in the future? We're almost at time. I want to give you a chance to sort of plug anything that you might have coming up in the pipes. What's left for 2022, and what are you sort of excited about for the future?
Yeah, I'm going to start doing some more studio paintings. That's the main thing. There's a few mural things that are starting to take shape, but they're all tentative. The big thing is another solo show next year in 2023 at Hashimoto in LA.
Okay.
Yeah, I can. But actually, yeah, and the show that we did in New York was awesome, and it went really well. And yeah, I'm excited to do another one.
Anything else you want to throw into the mix today, Pat Perry?
I've just had such a great time with Doug. We've been hanging out for like a week, I just want to say, and we've really gotten to know each other. It's been, come on, don't lie, you know. We've been having a good time. I think we've been,
That was Detroit-based artist Pat Perry in conversation from sunny Ferizaj in Kosovo. We'll stick some links in the show notes for anyone interested in discovering more of Pat's work. Equally, if you are interested in learning more about the Kosovo Mural Fest and the work they're doing to usher in a new generation of creative talent, there will be some links in there as well. That's it from me for now. I will be back with you shortly with the second part of this special from Kosovo with none other than Axel Void. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.